Hi, welcome to Wise Beyond Bitcoin, your home for the crypto neo news, education, and opportunity. My name is Ryan.
My name is Lucas.
And today we're going to be talking a little bit about some news regarding central bank digital currencies and some of the discussion surrounding them. But before we jump into that, we want to mention our playlists, right?
Yeah, we got a few playlists on, we talk about blockchain and crypto, but we also talk about blockchain and crypto as a new technology emerging in the market. We have playlists if you want to learn how to get involved in blockchain and crypto, how to start your secret crypto journey, secret NFTs, because having been around this new technology and really interested in the economic impact that it has over time, we really value privacy and how many blockchains lack privacy. So we definitely like to keep people abreast of secret network and those privacy solutions. And DeFi tutorials, we walk people through. There's airdrops because this new technology is growing so fast and it's innovating so many different markets. There's a lot of investment. There's a lot of value flooding in all over the world. It's decentralized. So there are opportunities, airdrops, returns that you can find. Of course, this is not financial advice, commercial advice, legal advice. It's just educational, entertainment, information. We're sharing our research. We're learning, and we're asking if you want to join this journey with us, then you can subscribe and the notification bell. But we love to talk about markets and the economy at large in the world and how it all connects us and interacts together, which is this Wise Beyond Bitcoin macro outlook. And Ryan, you got some really good stuff to talk about to follow up with some topics we've covered in the past, some more developments.
Yeah, we've been making it a point to talk about central bank digital currencies, as well as sanctions and various regulations that are either coming or being written, and talk about how they impact crypto and the broader economy and just how we live, right? How we interact and exchange. So in that story, we've talked a lot about Elizabeth Warren. She's a major player in this narrative, and recently, a few days ago, she came out and straight up called for the creation of a central bank digital currency, a CBDC. And there's been a lot of talk recently of an executive order that Biden signed, which basically instructs various federal agencies to start studying that question, the question of the CBDC, and also generally what regulations ought to look like is in a broad sense. So in this discussion and in this back and forth, there's kind of multiple camps that are emerging, right? And it's definitely not a unified front, right? You would expect that to be in politics, right? There to be factions. That's kind of goes with the territory. So in the side that Elizabeth Warren is currently on, or it represents, I suppose, the focus is definitely on central control, right? So we're talking about a currency, a CBDC that would be, regulated by the central bank. So this would be something that would be like a digital dollar equivalent, and have all the same, control mechanisms and focus that the dollars have now. So it'd be a central bank digital currency. But further, there's also a real big focus on the kind of regulations that make sanctions possible, right? So there's another bill that's actually going to be up for a vote. It's got backers. It's not an idea, but it's actually in progress, and it's about sanctions compliance for crypto companies. And the idea here is that if a non-U.S. crypto company were to not follow the sanctions that the U.S. were to put, say, on a Russian entity, then this bill would open up a pathway for enforcing that, right? So whether it be through fines or through banning people from using that entity or that outlet, but it creates a legal justification for that kind of control. And so you can clearly see that whatever kind of CBDC she recommends, that the focus will definitely be on how it can be used to impose sanctions, right? The idea is that sanctions have to be a part of that story, right? And that it's not enough for it to just be uh, a digital currency, but there has to be some central mechanisms involved with it.
And so central bank digital currency is kind of it slips in with the rest of blockchain and technology, but it's really not. And that's the joke, is that Bitcoin represents, there are certain Ethereum, there are certain blockchains, cryptos that represent decentralized. The protocol is run. No one can manipulate the code. No one can change it. They can't change
It's immutable.
the inflation rate. Here, they're talking about a central bank is just, we have our ledgers, we control it, and we can immediately shut off a wallet. We can sanction this. We can
Right.
Right. So this is not the strength and the benefit, even though it's being spoken of in the same context as some great innovation. It's really not any kind of innovation.
Well, I would
that,
say it's actually a de-evolution or a retrograde. And we're going to link this article later on. Go ahead.
And before you get into this, because this is a great article, go back to that first one, that picture of Elizabeth Warren. I think scroll to the top. Is that the one that has the date? Yeah, April 1st. It's almost like an April Fool's joke, right? Because if you follow Elizabeth Warren, this is someone who has not a clue as to how decentralized finance works, AMMs, blockchain, the volume, she's come out and said many things and had to be corrected. And people said, hold on a second. And it's so brazen. It's funny how it's like, you know what, maybe I should take some time to read about this, learn about it. Instead, it's like every week she's out talking about something new, as if I don't have time to learn about it. I've got a narrative that I've got to post across my desk, because she doesn't, it's clear from what she's spoken that she lacks some understanding about blockchain and crypto.
Well, as in so many things, there seems to be a positive correlation between, how uninformed you can be. It seems to be a positive correlation between that level of uninformedness. I'm going to just make that word up, and confidence. Like there's this weird marriage of confidence and ignorance that happens with people. And I don't think, and it's not a problem with Elizabeth Warren specifically, it's a human problem, but it's definitely being demonstrated, this Dunning-Kruger tendency where, you know very little and you have a lot of confidence about something. And she shows, to your point, over and over again in these Senate hearings, that she really doesn't understand stable coins, mixers, the blockchain in general, right? She's got this idea that there's all this money laundering, all this criminality happening, but in reality, as has been pointed out to her many times, the liquidity that would be necessary to launder, hundreds of millions of dollars on the blockchain through mixers is just it's a pipe dream.
A $20 billion Wall Street, something recently, just very recently. Wall Street, but we've covered Panama Papers, Pandora Papers. The reality is that the volume and the amount of problems with the current financial system is trillions. It's trillions of dollars. And what blockchain and crypto, the total liquidity, I mean, the whole market cap is very minute compared to the traditional financial system. So
let's focus on this point right here. This is great. She says that she sees cryptocurrency as this decade's real estate bubble. Well, I have news for her. We're living in a real estate bubble right now. And if you check on the financial presses, they're all talking about, is the real estate bubble, is the housing market going to collapse? Is the commercial real estate bubble going to pop? So, and what is that driven by? It's driven by a lot of securitizations, derivatives, flows of credit through central banks, commercial banks, the very entities she's in charge of regulating.
Crafty accounting.
Sure. Right.
And it's
so I see a lot of irony there, and like saying and pointing out that this new emerging technology is some kind of real estate bubble, when in reality there's an actual real life real estate bubble that's dwarfs anything going on in the cryptocurrency markets by many orders of magnitude.
Let me just say what you said and put it in perspective. If all of Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency market were to go away tomorrow, it would hurt. It would hurt a lot of people would be bummed out, but it wouldn't the world would be fine. The world would keep moving on. The world,
Right.
but look at the problems that are going on in the traditional financial system that have nothing to do with crypto. And you talk about commercial real estate. We're looking at skyscrapers, buildings. We're talking about billions of dollars
Right.
of capital that was built up in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, where people were expecting all this new industry. And now we have technology. People are working from home. Those buildings, not only are the ones that were filled not going to be filled again, the ones that were built expecting all this new production, and the design has changed, and there's going to be a lot of reevaluations. And when those buildings aren't filled and those payments aren't coming through, it's as you know, our banking system is built up on rehypothecations and
Right.
leveraging,
Yeah.
and the leveraging and the bubble that's going on in the current financial system is so big. And the problem there with the interest rates, the inflation, the dancing that's going on there is such a tightrope that blockchain and crypto is just a baby. It's just such a baby technology sector that should just kind of be left alone until more
You
people
know, it
understand
almost
about it. Until
it
more,
almost seems like a scapegoat. You know,
it
it's
seems
like
like
you
a
hire that
scapegoat. Right.
hire somebody, you know, it's like the Enron hires a new accountant, and it's fresh out of law school, and it's like, oh, you're in charge of our accounting. You know, it's like, okay, yeah, when everything goes on, that's the guy that gets the blame, you know. And it's
Right,
like
right. And most people watch TV, they wouldn't know the difference. It's like, oh, it is Bitcoin's fault.
It's because of the
Bitcoin's
stable coins. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Or
it's because
Bitcoin.
stable coins. It's like, it's nothing to do with stable coins. Bitcoin's like, this economy is about to collapse, you guys. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of, but
It's
anyways.
funny. Well,
Here's what you
we started off.
we've
go
been
ahead.
talking about crypto before we even had YouTube and started doing this for fun.
Oh yeah.
But we went at university and got to go back there and talk about blockchain and where it's going from 2017, 2018. Look where we're at now, because back then senators and mainstream pundits
Ignored it.
and said nothing but negative things about it. And now no one has even admitted how wrong they were and how much they didn't know just a year or 2 years ago, or
Right.
even, and they're just so like, well, this is what we need to do. It's like, how can you know?
Well, it's so blatant that the narrative.
What we
think about it.
do.
The narrative continues. Elizabeth Warren's quoted right here saying, this whole thing's a bubble. The whole digital world has worked up very much like a bubble works. What has moved it up? It's moved up on the fact that people all tell each other it's going to be great. That's her word. So she's saying it's fueled by hopium. So imagine that the very thing that you think is hopium, that you said was going to be dead a couple of years ago, and now we're saying, oh, we got to make sure we define this legally correctly. It's a security or it's a commodity. We got to make sure we regulate it right. It's like, well, wait a minute. If it was a my pet rock thing, then why would you care about integrating it in correctly with the modern financial system? It's right. Only because you know this thing has legs, it is going to be around in the future, that you care to integrate and create rules for it. So it's like, it's very duplicitous, right? Is it a my pet rock? Is it a bubble? Is it nonsense? Is it hopium? Or do you want to make sure we have legal integration with this? You know, it's right. Like, But shifting gears from that, this article is pure gold. I stumbled upon this. As you see, it's from March 4th. It's been sitting in my browser as a tab. We've been waiting to do a video on it, but now's the time. And but I just had to share it because it's so good. It's written by a couple of professors. We're going to leave links. You're going to be able to read this yourselves. But basically, the idea is that it sets up the situation we're in, discussing the potential for a central bank digital currency and how it could solve certain problems, right? But then it makes it very clear that this solution has a major drawback. It has less financial privacy than cash, and then goes in to talk about how important privacy is. Some great quotes from some important people in history, and then makes a point we like to make a lot, that physical cash has a great deal of inherent financial privacy involved, right? You can use it, spend it without an ID, without having an account. It's the peer-to-peer cash of par excellence, right? No transaction fees, no gas fees or anything, right? So, and this isn't to say
that sentence at the top too that you had there: privacy is a necessary feature of a free society. I mean, yeah. We love blockchain and crypto and the innovations, the potential it brings to to make the world a better place. But that's also one of the reasons why we consistently talk about
Secret.
blockchain that have secret network, that have privacy, because it allows for practical applications that you can't have on other chains. So this is a beautiful find that other people are recognizing the necessity of privacy. And like you're saying, especially how CBDCs, these central bank, which are not immutable, transparent code, they're
Right.
the opposite. They're the opposite. What's funny is that they're being lumped into the same category as Bitcoin and these, these new innovations and this immutable, decentralized, secure code, where code is law, and they're being put in the same category, but it's not a fruit, right? It's like if all you have all this fresh fruit, and then you've got a piece of candy that's fruit flavored. It's like, the fruit
is different.
This is different. It might be watermelon flavor or apple flavor, but this is a Jolly Rancher. Okay. It's not. And as the CBDC is a Jolly Rancher, it's not a piece of fruit. You wouldn't want to live off of that stuff. I wouldn't.
So essentially the problem with this is that all your data, all your transactions, everything would be at the mercy of the powers that be, right? There'd be no firewall between you and between your data and say the IRS or whoever, right? And we're not advocating any criminality or trying to escape liability. The point is that a society without privacy has a different set of incentives than the one we're used to, right? It's great that there's pathways to catching criminality, but when there is no privacy and when everything is to be seen publicly, then that creates a whole new set of incentives for, say, going after people. Some regime could come into power and target their political enemies, right? I don't like the Republicans or the Democrats or the Libertarians or the Green Party, so I'm going to monitor their transactions and put them subject to greater scrutiny or greater enforcement, right? So these tools could be turned on against their intended purpose and then rerouted for other purposes. And so anytime you have an incentive, or anytime you have unlimited power, right? Which is a great quote from Anton is that absolute power corrupts, right? So just the existence of this kind of power would be corrupting. It's kind of like the ring. You pick the best guy to throw it in the river or the lake of fire, but anybody who puts that on is going to have their morality tested and their ethics tested, and that's not the best game theory for society. Let's just put it that way. And so this whole article is great, talks about some of these problems, wraps it up with the point that what we need is not a new digital money, but really a new digital cash, something that can be spent privately, right? That can be easily spent and not tracked. And so I thought that was a great article and I wanted to share it. But beyond that, there is an imperfect proposal that kind of approaches this same idea that we just read about. We'll have links so you can read this, but there's a proposal right now in progress that would basically have the Department of the Treasury, not the Federal Reserve, issue a new digital dollar. And the idea is that it would be privacy preserving and it have anonymity built in, right? And now the details, when you read this, there are some details that they get into that maybe strike you as problematic. They did us. We have quite more questions about this than anything. So we're not endorsing this, but it's really only to say that this kind of an idea, it's something it's good to see them moving in this direction towards at least recognizing that privacy is important. And even if we don't agree on the details, right? Because that can be ironed out later. But some of the details that I had issues with is that this proposal would not have, there'd be no ledger, right? So there'd be no centralized ledger or distributed ledger. It would just be a secured hardware and software that would be issued and controlled by the Treasury. So it'd be kind of like a cash bearer, a cash-like bearer instrument. So if you possessed the hardware with the balance, that would be ownership. And if you lost that, then you would lose it. You wouldn't be able to have keys or some kind of login or an account. It'd just be kind of like having a physical currency on your person. So there's some questions about how secure that would be.
This is
And
another example of what's not blockchain and crypto. I
exactly,
mean,
this is not blockchain or crypto.
but it's showing that at least there are people who are learning about this in politics that are aware of the necessity of privacy and anonymous transactions.
And for that, we say,
yeah,
round
that's
of
great.
applause.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I would say it's pretty fragile and maybe not the solution. Still a centralized point of failure to have that, that specific hardware and that cache like. But this is definitely with the privacy and the recognition of the benefit of anonymity as a necessary feature for the point is that money in economics historically has been neutral, or to make it
right.
neutral.
That's the ideal, right?
That's
yeah.
the ideal. And if all of a sudden you start, it's not anonymous and it's not private, it's no longer neutral. There's a layer to this new institution that everyone depends upon for their survival and for their work,
right,
and measure things and price things. And now you've politicized it, or you've created this new dynamic that people will be able to influence in a way that I guess will add some new dynamic to the Cantillon effect for sure.
well, one thing that pops into my mind while I'll get it out before we wrap this video up, because we've gone long enough, but this harkens back, this idea of a treasury based digital dollar, it harkens back to something that I remember reading about years ago when we were reading monetary theory. And I read this book called The Web of Debt, and I don't remember the author. It was some female author, but it was basically setting up this notion that what we really needed was not to get rid of the fiat money, but to get rid of debt-based money that would be issued by private and commercial banks. And her solution was almost the same as the William Jennings Bryan solution, if you're familiar with that dude. But this was about a debt-free treasury note where the government just printed the money. And instead of having to turn to a debt-based system where you have to pay interest to borrow to create the money supply, this was like, well, no, just have the treasury print it and they can be in charge of that. And it was this kind of dueling monetary theory. And in the time, I didn't really buy into it too much because I was all on the gold standard, gold bug, Austrian, full 100% reserves. And then I also was thinking, well, let the market handle it. Let's have competing monies. But reading about this and seeing the treasury part of this proposal, it's kind of rekindled that thought. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, this might be a more modern comeback of that older idea. And I'm not endorsing it or anything. But I do find it interesting, to see it's something to think about.
Just like certain DAOs they have certain inflows that they manage to back whatever tokens they issue. We're going to issue this token and it's backed by this liquidity or these reserves that we have. If treasury token being issued, it will be backed by the return, the future
tax flows or whatever, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
They get. So,
but there might be, but the cool thing is there wouldn't necessarily be a bond attached to it, right? That's kind of where it gets interesting.
Right. And I wonder if, if you'd have people more decentralized able to participate in some of the expenditures and how certain things if there's a more decentralized approach, like the DAO method to the governance,
like an airdrop
to the governance side as well.
Right. That'd be great. Yeah. Oh yeah.
A limitation of how certain things are spent, because you're eliminating certain institutions and certain.
Yeah. So why not maybe have a little bit of a check this box if you want it to go to war, check this box if you want to food stamps, you want to fund the food stamps or healthcare or whatever. Yeah. Right. I mean,
because we only have so much info.
I would love that.
The DAO's got to make a decision here. We got to come up,
Yeah.
Even if it was decentralized to different, people would participate on their phones and let your so-and-so know, but it would all be decentralized and transparent, which, whatever version of history, wherever you're at, there's always been stories of corruption, ballot box, not knowing what's being done here. So anytime things can be built that are where code is law and it's due smart contracts and it is built on the security,
Verifiable.
verifiable and transparency.
That's the problem with this, is there's not a lot of transparency involved. It's a black box, and you trust that the hardware and the software are doing their thing. Trust is in short supply these days, so I don't know how that's going to work.
Well, it's trust is good, but you still cut the cards, and that's the benefit of Bitcoin or some of these others, is that the trust is built on the way the code works. It's like you don't.
Right.
It's trustless because you don't have
Well,
to rely
if
on
maybe
it.
if they make it open source, right?
Sure.
We'll see. But yeah, anyway, I think this was a great conversation. We're gonna follow this story. This isn't the last chapter.
Absolutely. E-Cash, CBDCs, digital money. And we'll continue to talk about some other innovations. Privacy is one of them. And another one, we talk about Hex and the time value currency and that beautiful iteration, how that is something I think that for a money in the future of blockchain should really take a look into that approach of inflation. Because
I agree for sure. That solves so many problems that have been unsettled in monetary theory, that it's something that needs to be talked about more. We will be talking about it more for sure. And we'll maybe send a link to that video below too. So if you missed it, we do kind of discuss what that's all about, what a time value currency is, why it's different from others, what makes it unique. And so we'll link that below too.
And until the next time, have a beautiful day and namaste, y'all.
Thank you.